Chris here at the Handle It Warehouse. We just received our Model 1200 stretch wrapper. As you can see, we moved it into place using these temporary fork pockets. Once you get it to the place where you want to be using it, you want to make sure you have a couple things in mind. One, that you have a nice hard level surface for the machine to be on. Also, you want to make sure that you're close enough to a power source so that you can reach it with the power cord. Now that you're all set, we can remove these fork pockets using a 13 millimeter and a 17 millimeter socket. Let's go ahead and do that. So we remove the fork pockets. Make sure you put them in a safe place, because if you want to move the unit again, you're going to need those. Now I want to show you some real cool stuff about this machine. When you take a look at this, you see the gray part here. This is only 8 inches around, and that actually is the ramp, which is really unique with this machine. That allows you to unload and load with a forklift, with manual pallet jacks, electric pallet jacks, and even like those long walkie rider jacks. What allows you to do this is you have this ultra low profile turntable. So check this out. This turntable height is only 3/4 of an inch, which is a patented design because it's a gear driven system. Most low profile turntables are 3 inches in height. So if you have a 3-inch high turntable and you want to load and unload with a pallet jack, a manual one, you're going to have about a 4-foot ramp sticking out from here. If you had an electric walkie jack, you need a longer ramp than that. You need probably about a 7-foot ramp. And if you had one of those long walkie rider jacks, you're looking at about a 10 to 12-foot ramp. So if you have this machine and you have that type of equipment, you're going to save a lot more space in your warehouse. Also, just with manual pallet jacks in general, it's a lot easier to load and unload those heavy pallets. Another thing to keep in mind, the weight capacity on this is 3,300 pounds. Most low profile turntables are about 4,400 pounds. You have to factor in the weight of the pallet jack you're loading with. Manual you don't have to worry about, but if you're looking at a walkie rider or something like that, you have to factor some of that weight in along with your pallet weight when you figure out the capacity. Now that I filled you in on the coolest feature of this machine, let's actually get back to work and get this thing plugged in. Couple things to note: you want to do a dedicated 110 outlet. You want to have about at least 15 amps of uninterrupted power. You don't want to use extension cords at all. And then also, you don't want to use a GFI outlet. If you use a GFI outlet, it most likely will trip the breaker on here and it won't continue to work. So let's go plug it in. Now that we have the unit plugged in, we can turn it on. So we hit the on switch here, and every time you turn it on, it's going to ask for a system reset. So you just push the reset here, and what's going to happen is if the turntable was not at the home position, it would go to the home position, and the carriage is always going to rise up, and then it's going to get to a level where I can easily push the safety carriage underneath it. It's going to tell me when it gets to that level. So it's going to stop here. So it's stopped. It says push safety under the carriage. The reason why it does this is it just wants to test and make sure that this switch is working. So right underneath here, there's a pad. I just push underneath here, and then it'll go back down to the bottom. Once it gets back down to the bottom, it's going to beep back at me. That means it's ready to use. So now that we have that going, we can load the carriage next with the film. And we have many other videos online that'll show you how to use your Handle It Model 1200. Thanks again for your purchase. Now that we have the unit plugged in and we did our system reset, we're ready to load the film. So a couple things to keep in mind. You have to make sure you use machine grade film for this unit. A lot of common mistake people make is that they're hand wrapping before they buy a machine, and they try to take that same film and use it with the machine. That's not going to work because that film is too weak, so it'll tear right away. So on this unit with the pre-stretch carriage, you're going to want to use, at least start out with an 80 gauge film. We actually include a roll of 90 gauge with every unit, but you're going to want to use different film based on what you're wrapping, but usually 80 to 90 gauge is what you're going to be using. So as you can see here, the carriage is actually down here. I could load it down there, but the cool thing about this machine is that it has an ergonomic way to load it, so you don't have to go down it. So if I go to the controls here and hit the jog minus button, I can go down and scroll to coil change procedure, hit OK. It'll bring the carriage up to an ergonomic height so I can change the film over. So we're gonna grab this roll of film, put it over this spindle, make sure that it's all the way down. Then we're gonna open up the carriage door. As we open this up, you can see right here, these are the pre-stretch rollers. This is what maximizes your film usage. I mentioned before, up to 250%. So we take this film, just go over this roller, just right straight through. And we want to go around the back end of this other roller. Very key to go around the back end. If you go around the front work, it won't work correctly. So let me show you how this works. So we close this. Once it's closed and I pull on this, you'll hear it engage. If I didn't go around that way and I went this way and I pulled, it won't pull. Because this going on here, pressure on this engages the pre-stretch rollers. So now we're ready to go. So going over the control panel, we'll go top to bottom and point out the controls. Very top here, we have the USB connection. This is normally covered up, but we just have it open so you can see. What that is, at the factory, we'll upload certain values to the machine of preset wrap cycles for you so that when you get it, you have some presets. Benefit to you if you have the machine and something happens and someone kind of goes in and messes with the controls and you want it back to a factory default, we can send you an email so you can upload the USB to here and get back to factory default. Down from there, you have the power indicator. As you can see, it's blinking because the unit's on. Then you have the status indicator. If the machine's in use, that would be blinking. Then you have the start button. So that's used to start an automatic wrapping cycle. Also, if you hold the start button during a wrap cycle, it'll stop the carriage movement as the turntable continues to spin so that it reinforces wrapping in the area it was stopped at. From there, you have stop. This stops the wrapping cycle. If you hit start again, the wrap cycle will pick up where it left off. So essentially, you're pausing the wrap cycle when you hit stop. Reset initializes the machine to its home position when the machine is powered on or after an emergency. Also, let's say you hit the stop button and you wanted to start your wrap cycle all over, then you would hit reset because it's going to start from the beginning again. From there, you have the on-off button, pretty self-explanatory. From up here, actually, you do have the display. So this is when you're going through the programs, you can actually see what's on there. Then you have the jog plus and jog minus buttons. These are used to scroll through the menus and set parameter values. Then you have OK. This is used to select the menu option, enter the current view or setting level, and it's used to confirm values you have entered. From here, you have escape. This is used to exit a menu or parameter, to go back to the previous level, or to cancel the value you have entered. So below this, you have 6 icons. These are for dual usage. So the factory default is that each one is a quick select for saved pallets 1 through 6. So you can see like pallet 1, pallet 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you want to change this, you can enable the function keys in the program in here. And what that'll do is make these live. So basically, instead of hitting this and it's pallet 1, it's turntable speed. You know, this pallet 2 would not be pallet 2, it would be tension. This would be carriage down speed. This would be up speed. This would be top wraps. This would be bottom wraps. So if you enable those functions, then as you're wrapping a pallet, and let's say you wanted to quickly speed up the turntable or set the tension higher, you can do it quickly through this way. But most of the time, and the way we send it out, it is the 1 through 6, pallet 1 through 6. That's, you know, the most part, that's how people use it. Below that, you have the emergency stop button. Just push that in and it's gonna stop the machine right away. To disengage it, just twist to the left and pull out. And then once you do that, it's gonna say press escape and it's gonna ask for a reset. So then you would reset it, then you can continue on with what you were doing. So using the automatic wrap cycle with this unit is very easy. We ship these units out with the first saved 6 pallets pre-configured. Later on, we'll show you in another video how you can adjust the settings in them. But once you have them adjusted how you want to, it's as simple as just hitting the program and hitting start. So I'm gonna show you how to do that. First of all, let's attach the film to the pallet. So right now you can see it's on program 2. I want to do program 1 and just hit start, and it's going to do its thing. So we just showed you how to use automatic mode, which is what you should be using most of the time, but you can use manual mode. Not preferable because you're not taking advantage of the efficiency of automatic mode, but if you need to use it, I want to show you how to use it in this video. So we walk over to the controls. So remember, as before, we're in program 1, so still showing program 1. And we could toggle and go to program 2 and do manual controls, but I want to stay in 1. So I go back to 1, hit the jog down button to get to the main menu. If I scroll down, I'm going to go over to manual controls and hit OK. And then hit OK again. Now it says jog up for carriage up, which is here. Jog down for carriage down, which is here. And then push OK for the turntable. Now keep in mind that the settings for how fast that stuff goes is somewhere else that you can save it and make different changes to it. But for now, we'll use the default settings. So I'm hitting OK, which is going to spin a turntable. If I let go, it'll stop. But if I hold it in and wait for a beep, it's going to keep going. Now it's going to keep going. I don't have to hold the OK. Now I'm going to hit the jog up button and hold that in to have the carriage go up. If I stop, it's going to stay in one position. Now if I hit up again, it's going to go back up. So I'll bring it back up, and I'll just get to the very top of this pallet. I'll let it go. I'm not pushing it now. And now I'm going to hit jog down, which will bring it down. So I'm holding the jog down button now. I'm going to hold it until we get to the bottom of this pallet. And then when I get to the bottom, I'll let it go a couple times here. Now to stop it, I'm just going to hit OK. That's going to stop it. And that's how you use manual mode. I want to show you how to use all the menu options on this unit. There are a lot of things you can do with this machine, so we're going to go through all of them. It can seem a little bit intimidating, but don't worry, you probably won't use all of them, but it sure is nice to have if you have a lot of variability in how you want to wrap your pallets. So let's take a look at the controls. So if you hit the jog down button, it's going to get you to the main menu. First thing you see here flashing is function keys. This is where you would enable the 6 icons on the control panel to either serve as quick start pallets 1 through 6. So you can see P1 through P6, or you could change them to the ability to select the setting that corresponds to the picture that's in there. You can see here, when we ship it out, we have it as P1 through P6. Then you have Save User Program. This is where you would input the pre-configured pallet wrap cycle and save any changes you made to it. Then you have Load User Program. If you're wanting to use any saved pallet wrap cycles besides the quick select, those 1 through 6 I discussed, you would do that here, because you can save up to 32 pallet cycles on this machine. So for example, you wanted to select save pallet number 7, you would do it right here. Then you have cycle type. This is where you would select the type of cycle you'd want to run. For example, if you want the machine to wrap the pallet with the carriage going up to the top of the pallet and then back down, or if you would want it to only wrap upward and then stop, or if you wanted to start at the top and go downwards. There's some more detail on that we'll do in another video. Cycle parameters, this is where you really fine tune how you want the pallet to be wrapped. So you can change anything from the tension, the turntable speed, the carriage speed, the number of bottom and top wraps. Here, there's a lot more you can do as well. We'll go through that specifically in another video. Then you have manual controls, which we talked about earlier. This is where you would go to be able to use the manual portion of the machine. Then you have coil change procedure. We talked about that when you load the film. You could go here and select it to bring the carriage to an ergonomic position so you can load and unload the film easily. Then you have general parameters. This is where you would enable different options that you may have purchased with this machine. For example, if you bought a top press for this unit or a remote control, you would go here to enable those features. This is something we would do at the factory. In these settings, there really isn't much you as a user should need to change. Then you have current values. Here you can see the current values of different aspects of the machine. The only one here you as a user might find useful is a carriage height. This would be useful if you want to specify a specific reinforcement height you want to wrap. By going here, you could determine which height you would want that set at. Then you have password. This is an area where you can lock out certain functions of this machine so that the users can't make any changes to certain areas of the machine. Password change, here's where you could change that password, date and time. You could change the date and time here. USB features, this is where you can upload and download the parameter data and usage data. This is more for our use when we preset the machine before we ship it out. And again, if you did something at your place and someone messed up the settings, we could always get you back some information so that you could load a USB to here and get it back to the specific settings. Then you have service and maintenance. So that's an overview of the menu options. We do have more videos that give you more specific information on the options that you have within the menu. All right, so we just went through an overview of the menu options. And within the menu options, there's a parameter called cycle type. I want to go in more detail on that and explain what that entails. So to get to the main menu, we just hit the jog down. And then if we scroll down, we're going to go over to cycle type and hit OK. When we get there, we're going to see some options. So the first one blinking says up and down. That's probably the most common setting that people use. So under this setting, the carriage will start at the bottom of the pallet, wrap upwards, and then when the photo eye detects the top of the pallet, the carriage will then come back down and complete the cycle at the bottom of the pallet. Then we have only downwards. So under this setting, the carriage will raise up to the top of the pallet, and the turntable will remain stationary while it does that. And then when the carriage gets to the top of the pallet, it will begin its wrap cycle of going downward and finish at the bottom of the pallet. Then we have layers. This setting is designed to wrap as you build the pallet. So when you hit the start button, the machine will start to wrap the pallet with the carriage going upward until the photo eye no longer sees the pallet. You can then begin stacking your next layer and hit start to wrap the next layer. Then we have manual TSD, also known as top sheet. This cycle is designed to allow you to place a top sheet on the load and it will wrap the top sheet to the pallet. When pressing start, the carriage will rise and wrap the pallet. Once the photo eye detects the top of the pallet, the carriage slightly moves down and the cycle stops. At this point, you put the top sheet on the pallet and hit start. The carriage will slightly go up and wrap the top sheet, and then the carriage will go back down to the bottom of the pallet, wrapping the pallet in the process. Then we have bi pallet. This cycle is designed to wrap two pallets that are stacked on each other, so it reinforces where that middle pallet would be. Then we have only upwards. Under this setting, the carriage will start wrapping at the bottom of the pallet, and when it gets to the top, it'll stop and the cycle will be complete. So that's a quick overview of the cycle types. We do have more videos that you can watch that will give you more detail on those cycle types and show you how they work. So we did an overview of the menu options, and then we dug a little bit deeper into the cycle types. Now we want to dig deeper into cycle parameters. This can be a little intimidating because there's a lot on here, but this is where you really can determine how you want your pallet wrapped precisely and exactly how you want it to go. So let's dig into that and take a look. So to get to the main menu, hit the jog down button. Then we're going to go down to cycle parameters. And then we're going to hit OK. First one here is bottom wraps. That's the number of times the pallet is going to be wrapped on the bottom. So you can set that value here. It's at 1 right now. Top wraps, same thing, but on the top. Then you have film breaking. So that's the tension. So right now you see it's set at 40%. That's going to be the tension that is going to wrap the pallet throughout the whole cycle. Now, very important here, after this, we have variable tension settings. If this is at 40, it's not going to take any of the next settings. So if you actually want these next settings to be live and active, this film breaking has to be at 0. If there's any value there, it's going to read that first. So if we go to bottom wrap tension, it's at 50, but that's not going to read it right now. Then we have ascent tension, top wrap tension, and descent tension. Then from there, we have rotation speed. That's going to be how fast the turntable is going to spin. Then we have ascent speed. This is where you set the speed for the carriage going up. If you have the tall pallet, you probably want to have this go slower so that you get more coverage in the middle of the pallet. Descent speed, same thing. You want to have it slower if you have a tall pallet, but if it's a short pallet, you would probably want to speed it up. Delay braking time, that's really not something that you're going to have to worry about. Flanging time, this is also known as the photo eye delay. This value is in seconds. So right now it's at 3 seconds. It's telling you how many seconds the carriage will continue to rise after the photo eye detects the height of the pallet. So the larger the number here, the bigger or more overwrap that you're going to have. Then we have pallet height. So if you turn the photo eye off, you can set this to just read a certain pallet height in centimeters. But if the photo eye is on, it's not going to read this at all. So right here on the next one, enable photo cell, it shows on. That means the photo eye is on. If you wanted to use the previous one, you have to turn the photo eye off here. Then we have wrap pallets. That's the number of wrap pallets that there's been done in this specific saved pallet. Then we have coil change height. So earlier we showed you that you can hit the coil change procedure. You can change the height here if you want to go lower or higher. Then we have initial carriage height. This is going to be if you want to start at a different height than at the lowest point. So you can set that here, and it's going to be in centimeters. Then we have final turn number. So if you want to add more to your bottom wraps, you can add an additional turn here. Reinforcement height. If you want to have some reinforcement wraps on a pallet, then you would enter that here in the height that you would want it at. And then here, reinforcement turns, you would actually, basically say how many turns you want it to do. So it's like top and bottom wraps, but for a different part of the pallet. Then we have final tension revolutions. So if you set a value for the final turn number, which I mentioned before, you could set a different tension here. Then we have manual table speed. So when you're in manual mode, this is where you would change how fast the turntable would go. Remember, this is within the pallet configuration you're at. So if we're in pallet 1 right now, if we're in pallet 2, this would be a different value. Same thing, manual carriage speed. You can change that here. And then manual tension, that's where you change the tension here. Then from there, you have recipe name. That is where you can actually call this what you want. Instead of just saying pallet 1, you could call it whatever name you want for that pallet. Then you have end cycle height. If you want to end your cycle at a certain height and not go all the way down to the bottom of the pallet, you can enter the height you want the carriage to stop at here. If you do this, you would have to enable this in the general parameter called carriage final cut position, which is G20. So that's an overview of the general parameters. One thing I wanted to note is that if you had different options added onto this machine, you'll see some more options within those general parameters. So for example, if you had auto cutoff added, you'd see 3 other settings in here that you could change that relate to that auto cutoff. In some other videos, we're going to show you how you can actually go in and make changes so you can have it set to wrap the pallet how you want it specifically to be wrapped. So you went through an overview of the controls. We also did an overview of the menu options, and then we dug deeper into cycle types and cycle parameters. Now what we want to do is actually show you how to make changes to a pallet so it can be saved specifically to how you want to wrap your pallet. So let's say I liked how pallet 1 wrapped, but I want to make some changes to it and save it as pallet 2. So right now I'm in pallet 2, I'm going to go to pallet 1. So now I'm in pallet 1, hit jog down to go to that menu, and I'm going to go down to cycle parameters to make some changes. So right now there's only 1 wrap on the bottom. I want to change that to 2, so I hit OK. I go up to change to 2, hit OK. Now I jog down to top wraps. I want to change that to 2 as well. Hit OK. Change to 2, hit OK from there. And then I'd like to take a look at the tension. So it's set at 40. Let's say I wanted to do a little bit more. I want to go to 45. Change 45 there, hit OK. And then I'll go to the next one. Now remember, the bottom wrap tension isn't going to matter because we have a value in the previous one. So I want to go over to ascent speed and change that to 40. So if I hit OK here, it's at 80. I'm gonna get it down to 40. Hit OK. And now within the general parameters, that's really all I want to change. I want to hit escape. And what I want to do is go over to cycle type. And I believe that was going up and down. Yep. I want to change it to only go upwards. So I'm going to go there, hit OK. Now I have that set. So I've made all those changes. Now I want to go up to Save User Program. Click OK. Now, if I save it now as palette 1, it's going to make changes to palette 1. What I want to do is actually make it for palette 2. So I'm going to hit up, change it to 2. So I'm kind of doing a save as. And I click OK. And now I've saved it. So it's saving complete. Escape to return. And now palette 2 is going to have all those changes that I made. It was going to be like palette 1 with the changes that I made to palette 2. And now should we all be set to wrap that palette. So now that we have the palette loaded, you can see you actually have a double stacked palette. So I want to point out a couple cool features on this machine that'll enable you to wrap this the best way possible. One is going to be reinforcement height. So I'm going to set specific wrapping going right around where the double pallet is. In addition to the bottom and top wraps, I'm going to have this area wrapped. Also, because you can see this could be pretty sharp, I'm going to set variable tension up on this. So when I start at the bottom and going all the way up, I'm going to keep it at a lower tension so we kind of get some coverage on here. And then on the way back down, I'm going to tighten it up. So that way you can get a nice tight wrap without tearing the film at all. Let's take a look. So first thing we want to do is go to Program 1. That's the one I want to be in. Then we're going to scroll down to get to the main menu. And I want to go to Manual Controls. Because I want to do is jog up and bring this carriage up so I can know what height I want to have the reinforcement wraps. So I'm going to bring it up a little bit into where I can see it's level with those two pallets. So about right there is where I want it. Now I want to know what height that's at. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to go down to current values. Click OK. Now I'm going to try and find where we would have the carriage height. So carriage height. So right now it's at 61 centimeters. So I'm going to escape back. I'm going to go up to cycle parameters. Okay. And then I'm going to keep the bottom wraps the same, top wraps the same. I'm going to set the variable tension up here as well because of the pallets being there. So I'm going to set this to 0. So by setting this to 0, it's going to start reading the next ones. So C5, bottom wrap tension. So I want to go low on the bottom. I'm going to go like 25%. Because I don't want it to tear at all. Ascent, I'm going to go to 25 as well. Okay. Top wraps, I can keep it at 50 because it's going to be past those pallets. Descent tension, I'm going to keep it at 50 as well. I'm going to skip rotation speed. Ascent speed, I'm going to keep the same. Descent speed, I'm actually going to slow that down because I want that tight tension to get more of that pallet, especially on the way back down where those double pallets are. So I'm going to go to 40. Then I'm going to go over to, skip this, reinforcement height. So remember we had 61. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to set it to 61 centimeters. Hit OK. And then I want to do 2 turns there. So I go to reinforcement turns, change it to 2, hit OK. And that'll be all I want to do. So I'm going to go escape. I'm going to actually save this as pallet number 3. So save user program. Because I still want to keep 1 how I had it. I'm going to save it as pallet number 3, hit OK, escape. Now if I go to 3, it's going to be all those changes I just made. So let's go and wrap this pallet and see what we got. Before we start, I'm going to hit reset so I can get the carriage down to the bottom position because we had brought it up to check what the height would be. And then I'm going to attach the film over here. I'm actually attaching it towards the front. The reason why is you can see how this is indented in the pallet. I want to get a better wrap with the product to the pallet. So I'm going to attach this here, and then we can start the cycle. So you can see the tension, it's pretty loose. We had it at 25. It's going to be loose all the way till we get to the very top, because we don't want this to break on these sharp edges. And notice right now we're at the reinforcement height, so it's getting that pallet really good. So it's doing a couple turns here, and then it's going to raise up. So we still have the lower 25 tension. Now once we get to the very top, it's going to do one spin around, and it should be tightened up. So now it's a lot tighter. See that? You can actually see the thinner. And notice as we're going down, we had it set at 40 on the descent speed instead of 80, so it's a lot slower. So that way we have that tight tension going more around the pallet. In the previous video, we showed you how to use reinforcement wraps at a reinforcement height, and you can do that in your saved pallet configuration. What I want to show you now is you can actually do that on the fly. So let's say you're wrapping and you decide, hey, I really want to get that part of the pallet. You can do it while it's wrapping. So I'm going to go to program 1, hit start, and it's going to, I have it set to 1 wrap on the bottom. So it's going to do that. And then once it does that, it's going to go up. And let's say I'm thinking, hey, I really want to wrap there and get it good. If I hold the start button in, notice this stops, and I can keep wrapping that one part of the pallet. Now if I let it go, it's going to go up. I'm just going to let it go up to the very top and do its 1 wrap on the very top. And then it's going to continue its cycle and finish out. In this video, I want to show you how to use manual top sheet mode. Earlier, we were showing you the cycle types, and one of those that was in there was the top sheet mode. So what that is when we wrap this pallet here, it's going to wrap up to around here, it's going to stop, and then I can put this top sheet over the top, which prevents any dust or anything from getting on top of the pallet. It's going to go back up and come back down to secure that. So if we walk over the machine, I'll show you how we're going to do that in the settings. All right, so right now we're in program 2, but I liked what I had in program 1. So I'm going to go there, then I'm going to jog down, and I'm going to go to cycle type. Keep everything as it was, except for I want to change it to manual TSD, which is manual top sheet dispenser. Click OK, then go up to save user program. And I want to save this as pallet number 3, because that's the same thing as 1, but with the top sheet. Click OK, and now it's saved. And now we can go ahead and start this wrap cycle. All right, now I can put the top sheet on, spread that over like that, and if I hit start, it'll finish up. So now you can see this is nice and secure. In this video, I want to show you how to use a cycle type called layers. What that is if you have a pallet like this, where you have 1 layer boxes, you have that there. We're going to hit start on here. It's going to wrap that. It's going to see it's at the top of the pallet, then it's going to stop. Then I'm going to stack another layer on, put it on here, hit start again. it's going to do the same thing, and then I'm going to do a third layer. When I get to the last layer, I'm just going to hit start again. So I'm going to hit it twice. Then it knows I'm actually at the top end of the pallet, and I'm going to finish the wrap cycle. So let's go over here and show you how we can get that setting going. All right, so I like what I had in program 1, so I'm going to use that as my baseline again. I'm going to jog down to go to cycle type, go there, and I'm going to choose layers, hit OK. Then I'm going to go up and save user program, and I'm going to save it as number 4 because I still want to keep that number 1. So I saved it as 4, complete. Now I can just go to 4 and I can hit start and we'll get going.